Hey guys, it's Tiny Tom Logan back with another video for you, and today we're going to be taking a look at two 295X2s in Crossfire. So yes, that does mean we've got effectively four 290Xs in a rig to bench. It's all over here right now. The reason why we had to wait for this was because I had to get the Corsair 1500 watt power supply. So I've had to do the Corsair review before I could do this. I've had to do the single car review before I could do this. And now we're finally on to the point where I can get it all in the rig and get it built. Because let's face it, what's the point in having a couple of these graphics cards and then having it all hanging out the rig with two separate power supplies and all that kind of stuff? I wanted to make it look pretty. So hopefully when I show you around it, you'll see I've tried my best to make it look pretty. We've also set it up so that it should favour the graphics cards as well, so that we get cool air in. But this really is going to be all about frames per second and benchmark scores. It's just, we know you'd have to be mad to want to buy two of these and run them all in a rig together, although you could do, and we could be bringing you the answers that you want to hear. But at the same time, it's an obscene amount of money, and do you really need this much performance? Looking at our graphs, as I'll show you later on, if you're planning on running, you know, high-res textures, 4K screens, or 4K screen, then yes, you could quite possibly be needing a pair of these. And I think you'd probably end up with a lot of people that envied you as well if you did. But anyway, this is OverKIll3D. So it's not because anything other than we can, and because we want to find out. It won't be staying like this. Don't forget, this is just our review system. This is just our test rig. And shortly after this review, I will have to take them back out because they need to go back onto other media houses to go and be tested elsewhere. But I'm going to stop blathering. I'm going to stop going around. We know there's £2 worth of graphics cards that we're testing today. And I'm going to bring you in for a closer look at the rigs so that you can have a look at the nerd porn that's about to commence. Okie chokie. So a look at the system, and I don't think we could have really made this much better performance wise, other than full on dedicated water cooling, which would get away from the point in reviewing the cards like this in the first place. But anyway, we've got the Corsair 760 case, then we've got the AX1500i power supply. Just to clarify as well, the graphics cards are powered by individual 8-pin connectors to the power supply. They aren't daisy chained, although the power supply will feed them like that. It's just so that people can't say that we've got any possible limitations there. So we've got that all cleared up. We've got the two Radeon Power Color 295X2s. They are running at stock. We've not done any overclocking or anything like that. We've got Asus Rampage 4 Black Edition, a 3960X running at 4.6 GHz. We've got 2400 MHz and 16 GB of Corsair Dominator Platinum in there. We've got a Corsair H105 for the cooling, and the fans that are on it are white LED AFs. We've only really used the AFs just because it helps illuminate the case a little bit though. We've got a GTX Neutron in there, 240 GB, and then we've got a Force LS in there, which is where the games and stuff are stored. So that is our system. One thing that we can see, if I zoom you in, is that the lower card, it's dormant. It's the AMD system will shut it down, so the red light goes off. Until you activate some of the, it kicks into 3D mode, then that light pings back alive again, and it all, starts running properly. It kicks in and starts working. So we've got the two radiators in the front. Now we've got those sucking cool air in. Yes, it does dump air inside the case, but it's so that the graphics cards are as cool as they possibly can be. But with both of these in here, you're looking at between 10 and 12 degrees C. With the side panel on, increase in CPU temps, and that's just because that top radiator sucks all that hot air in. We generally don't have problems with graphics cards in the rigs causing the CPU to get that much hotter, but obviously we've effectively got 4 290s running in this, and there's an immense amount of heat that gets dumped inside the case, and it all ends up out the roof. So if you're going to think about running an immense system like this, you will need to carefully think your cooling layout. But we've obviously set it up like this so it favours the graphics cards more than anything else. Obviously we've got it in our custom graphics card test rig, and it's just something I kind of initiated so that we had something slightly nicer to look at. Now what I am going to do is I'm going to stick the side panel on. What I would do if I can get it out. And I'm probably going to have to move the graphics card. I'm going to have to move the camera anyway. But you can have a good look while I faff. It's a bit dusty. So we've got that on. And that is our test system today. So I'm going to move the camera and we'll be back in a second. So then what we've got set up here now is our temperature tests and our power tests. So we've got a max wattage here that is being pulled from the wall. So we'll be able to see in a bit how much the pair of graphics cards have pulled. We've got the temperatures over here, and we're going to be doing all of this with Valley. And I use Valley for all of my thermals and actually my power tests when it comes to graphics cards as well. A lot of people in the last video did panic about the LS saying it's at 99 degrees. It's always just registered that. I don't know whether it's a faulty diode in the actual SSD itself, or whether it's just not being read properly, but I can assure you it's not at 100 degrees, mainly because we've only really just turned the system on as well, but it's always like that, so don't panic. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to flick this on now. We're now going to let this rotate in 4K for around 30 minutes, maybe a little bit longer, because I'm going to go and make a cup of tea, and I will be back and update you shortly. Okay then peeps, so let's get this closed down. Get back to the desktop. Yay! And the camera sorts itself out. Woo-hoo-hoo! Right, so running at 4K has made about 100 watts difference, which is quite bonkers. So from the wall, we have pulled 1358.7 watts, and that's been monitored by the power supply itself, because we're running on the AX1500i, and that's got all this wonderful stuff built in. It also meant that the actual rig itself was pulling 1234 watts, but the 1358 is from the wall itself, because obviously we have to deal with efficiency and stuff like that. Over here you can see that we've been up to 73 degrees, and we can, I don't think the yeah, that's still not working properly, but the actual wattages and stuff is just, that's bonkers mental. Absolutely ridiculous, but I love it. I absolutely love it. It's a beast of a system. That's actually the most I've had a single system pull to date. So I'm properly impressed with that. Anyway, my lovely people, it's time for us now to scare you with some benchmarks. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to run them right in front of you, because there are some ridiculously massive scores to be seen. Don't worry, I won't bore you with them running. Anyone that's seen Firestrike Extreme run will know how quite ridiculously smooth this is running at the moment. And oh my god, there is your reason why. 14,872 on Firestrike Extreme. Not Firestrike. Firestrike Extreme is 14,000. That's just ridiculous. Now I'm not going to bore you filming you the next one, because I'm going to run 3D Mark Vantage Extreme. But get ready to be surprised. Okay then, so 58,787. Now that's an X score. not a P score. Generally we hit a buffer around 59,000 with 3D Mark Vantage, where quite literally, and it's a word I don't use very often because you don't need to, is we actually hit the limits of the CPU. And as you can see, the CPU score is 48,524. Now, yeah, the GPU score is 59,449. So we're practically on the limits with this benchmark that we can't push it any further without pushing the CPU up anymore. This is completely and utterly nuts. I never thought I'd see an X score go quite this high. I'm properly shocked by this, and you can probably hear the grin on my face as well. But anyway, I think it's now time that we move on to maybe look at some of the ridiculous game performance. Right then peeps, so we have showed you the Firestrike Extreme benchmark already, but we thought we'd chuck the 3D Mark graph in for you to have a look at. Now I have highlighted the wrong graph. It should be the blue one at the top, because it's sorted by Firestrike, which is what that result is, and I've highlighted Cloudgate by mistake. But anyway, as you can see that we've got, you know, dropping down through the levels. This is the first time that we've really kind of got past the behemoth that was the Gamewood Phantom SLI overclock. By quite some amount really, when you think about it. Going from 9,901 to 14,871 is a pretty big step. But yes, I know we've got a lot more cards and cores, but it's still some monumental scores there. 23,682 for Firestrike on its own, and again we got the nearly 15,000 for Firestrike Extreme. But if we move on, this is where things get quite interesting, and that's the gaming results, because the scaling, when it works, is absolutely brilliant. Look at Tomb Raider there. You can see that we've gone from 48.9 up to 105.9, which is better than 100% scaling when you think about it. Excuse me. These are all 4K, remember. Sleeping Dogs, pretty much the same. Doesn't get as good with Metro Last Light, but that's still, do you know what I mean, a 40% bump there. Metro 2033, pretty much 100% scaling there, but it does fall apart really when we get down to Alien versus Predator. You can see that actually comes back, and you can get that a lot with the games, and that's not a, you know, a problem with the graphics cards. It's kind of a combination of a combination of the games and the drivers, whereas, you know, they don't talk to each other very nicely, and we have come across some quite interesting problems when we were trying to do this. We've not been able to get, for argument's sake, any of the Origin games to run. So Battlefield 4 just errors. It gets a DirectX 11 error, and we have to run it in DX11 because of it's the only way we can you know, record the frames per second. If we disable one card, it starts up fine. So it's definitely the fact that there's the two in there. Yes, we could just do a mantle run, but if we did just do a mantle run, then we couldn't tell you how quick it was running. So it is a very, you know, it's a complicated thing. But it did the same with Crysis. We'd get into the menus with Crysis. As it tried to launch the game, it would just freeze, and it was again a DirectX 11 error. So the thing with these cards to remember is, yes, they're brilliant when they work, but they can also drop your frames per second, as they did with Alien vs Predator, but they can also stop the games running altogether as well. Anyway, it's now time for us to move on for a bit of a conclusion, I think. Right then guys, moving on to a conclusion, and we're going to give it the Performance Award. Now, there was a little bit of a fuss before because I didn't give this single 295X2 a gold award. Now, it was just the little AMD trolls coming out of the woodwork, because they were going, oh, yet another AMD review doesn't get a gold award. The 290 got a gold award, so go back in your caves and cover yourself up and shut up. Right, so yes, Performance Award. We gave it a Performance Award rather than a gold award on the last one because it's quite expensive. And that was pretty much the end of it. We didn't give two 780 Ti's a gold award, we give them a Performance Award as well. So please Yeah, I think really when the trolls come out and say something like that, it's just because of the air between their head or the sawdust or something like that rather than anything else. But I don't think I could have said much more positive things about the 295X2, to be honest with you. You need to remember that I have to be kind of a little bit balanced about it as well. A lot of people also kind of went off on one about why was I expecting the temperatures to be so low. And that's because if you put a dedicated water block on it, that's where I would expected them to have been. So you need to kind of, rather than just take an offence to something, when I say, it could have been about this, so kind of simmer yourself down and maybe try and understand why I'm thinking that or why I'm saying that. But two in the rig together, and it's annoyed me that the light's gone off on the second one again. It always does that. When you get back to the desktop, I think it's the ULC, I think they call it. It kind of it goes into a dormant mode. But anyway, so the two together, absolutely ridiculous scores. Fully, do you know what I mean? This is this is what OverKILL3D is all about. It's not necessarily something you'd want to do, because even when we're treating the graphics cards nicely, the amount of heat that goes into the inside of that system is unbelievable. The door gets warm to touch. You can put your hand on it, and even though it's acrylic, you can feel that it's warm. It's nuts. The roof actually gets past the point of, it's still warm, but it's so warm. It's like, whoa, that's quite warm metal. It's almost like as warm as the radio, almost like the radiators at the front. It's been a bit of an eye-opener. 1354 watts in itself. It's like, oh my days, did you really just pull that from the wall? So it's not a shy system at all. And the thing is with the benchmarks, we can quite literally say that we are bottlenecking the CPU, and I hate that phrase. But it's just because we are at the limits of what the graphics cards are working to their potential. But the CPU side of it it's not bottlenecking it in a sense. It's just the CPU's doing all that it can, and rather than the graphics cards not being able to keep up, this time it's just they're just running at their max. If we did up the CPU, it would the X score would go up a little bit, but the P score it's beyond it now. It's ridiculous, and I love it. I really do love the fact that we're getting like 59,000 in 3D Mark Vantage. That's my P-scores. It's just daft. So really, with something like this, please remember, I know there's £2,000's worth of graphics cards in there. I know it's bonkers. I know you're going to need a power supply, which is going to be the best power supply a manufacturer can provide, because that quite literally is the best power supply Corsair has ever made. And if I hadn't have got that in for review, I couldn't have done this review with these two graphics cards. That's the end of it, because the AX 1200 watt couldn't have coped with it. I would have ended up having a second power supply put in there, and I probably would have had like an AX 860 or something running the system, and then had the AX 1200 watt just to run the graphics cards. So the fact that we've got some epic power supply age, NES or whatever like that, meant we could actually make what is a much tidier system, rather than having it all hanging out of the bench rig like we used to. But it is one of those things where it is nerd porn. I know most people aren't going to want to buy this, but you want to watch about it, which is why I've made the video. So we've done it, we've ticked the box off, and now we can just sit back and go, yeah, we've done that now, yeah, like done that, been there. But it was brilliant just to have a play. As I said before, if if those of you that are here because you might actually want to do this, when you get this many cores in a single system, you do run into problems, and that's just the way it is. We couldn't get any of the Origin stuff to work, and that was including Battlefield. If I turned one of the graphics cards off, like I can on the system, if I turned that off, booted into the system, went into Battlefield, turned it into Mantle mode rather than DX11 mode, shut it down, turned the graphics card back on again, then went back in, it would start. But we still couldn't get Crysis to run. So you always end up with a lot of faffing around. You also may find, because obviously we don't do an immense amount of games, but the more games that you look into, the more you may find that you get problems. Some games will only use a single card. Some games, because it's kind of all confused, that you don't know which core to use and all that kind of stuff, you'll see that it will run worse than a single card. So it's without doing like 50 odd games, you could never get it. But I think with our main batch, you can see that a lot of them have been pretty much 100% scaling, and that's just, that in itself is nuts. And those few that have done so well, rather than it being, you know, like, oh, a couple of frames, you know, we're almost getting double. That in itself just goes to show you how well things are progressing as far as Crossfire is concerned, as far as multi-core is concerned. And also, think about it, peeps, that was all done at 4K as well. So, and that wasn't just 4K with 0 AA and stuff like that. That was as we run all of our games. That's 4K resolutions with everything turned up to the absolute hilt. We couldn't turn the AA up anymore. We couldn't turn the textures up anymore. It was all running balls out. So we had, I mean, I can still see it on the screen now, 105.9 frames per second in Tomb Raider in 4K. It's just bonkers. And I love it. And these little things like this actually help get me interested and put a grin on my face again, because it's just something to get excited about. It's just a shame now I need to take the graphics cards out, box them up, and then let them go back again. Because with stuff like this, people seem to think just because it's here, it's mine, I get to keep it. It's not the way it works. But I'm thankful that I've had to get a little play, and now I'm going to get back to doing Z97 reviews. But so there's a bit of a mixed bag. Most of it's positive. A bit of it's to do with heat, a bit of it's to do with power, and a bit of it's to do with we couldn't get games running. But I loved all of it. I absolutely loved all of it. I had to pick my jaw up when I saw 1350 watts. Oh, and I forgot to say, in 2560 by 1440, that was 1250 watts. So that extra resolution added 100 watts to the power draw. Just in case you think, oh, I'm going to get a bigger monitor, it's not going to make any difference. Oh, yes, it will. Anyway, this is Tiny Tom Logan, quite early in the morning as well, so don't think I've had loads of coffee. This is just general excitement. With another video for you, out.